Hello, everybody, and welcome to the alignment. This is the inaugural alignment for 2024. If you've not joined us before, the alignment is the webinar for global products. So that means that we take a look at how you can manage global products around the world and all of the challenges associated with that. We do an episode about once a month, and each new episode opens as the last one closes, so you can head to the site right now. We'll have a link later, and sign up to the next one. But we do a different one every month, so it's great to keep coming back. And I know that a lot of people are returning, so thank you to you as well. This episode of the alignment is called "Help, I'm Nothing Like My Users." If that statement reflects a problem that you have in your organization, then don't worry. Our fabulous speakers today are going to be helping you to resolve the issues that this causes and get a better sense of your users through better UX research. And we have some fantastic speakers today. Just a little note about global app testing before we start. So we are Global App Testing. We are a crowd testing organization. That means that we have 90,000 plus, I think, professional testers around the world in 190 countries and territories, and they help generally enterprise software organizations understand their user experiences everywhere that they're live and in places that they're not live that they want to test things. So that's what we do. And we launched this webinar series originally because we're a little bit well known in the product management space. I know there's a lot of people in the kind of localization and globalization space here as well. We're less well known there. And we wanted to introduce ourselves. We also wanted to hear a lot of the expertise that is in the room. I know we've got some amazing expertise and job titles, not just among our speakers, but among our audience as well. So I'm going to be asking you today to ask lots of questions. The format of the alignment is that all of our speakers are going to be talking for just 5 minutes on a topic that is related to the week's theme. While they are asking the questions, if you in the audience have a question for them, if you have something, we do encourage you to pile in and ask questions. You can do that using the Q&A box. It is at the bottom of the screen. It is right next to the chat. And if you just ask your questions there, then we will get to them at the end. We've got 30 minutes dedicated to Q&A, so please do pile in and ask your questions. The only other thing I want to say before we kick off is that yesterday was a landmark day in the alignment lifespan, which is that we launched the Global App Testing 2024 Global Product Briefing. This is a kind of structured document that gets insights from all of the 44 influencers we spoke to over the course of 2023 into one amazing package. It's great. We'll be posting that in the chat right now, and we'd encourage you to, don't read it now, watch the alignment now, but do have a look at it afterwards and share it on LinkedIn if you like it. Our speakers today, we've been very lucky to have 5 amazing speakers. The first is Artem. Artem's my colleague. He is the Senior Product Manager at Global App Testing. He's going to be kicking us off today and talking about how testing can drive your user growth. Following Artem, we've got Sabrina Duda. Sabrina is the Principal UX Researcher at the Stepstone Group. If you're not familiar with them, it includes Total Jobs. Sabrina is going to be talking about using jobs to be done to focus on the user. Following Sabrina, we've got Carolina Frieri. She is the Senior Program Manager at Uber. And Carolina is going to be talking about cultural sensitivity as a driver for global expansion. Next, we've got Olga Safonova. Olga is the Senior Product Manager at Workday, and she's going to be telling us 3 mistakes you might be making in your UX research. And then finally, we have Simon. Simon is the CMO at Vistatech. Vistatech help brands shape their global content strategy. I have a couple of questions for Simon to help understand how to get the most out of your suppliers around globalization. So I think I've been talking for a really long time now, so I'm going to pass straight over to Artem. Artem, tell us all about how testing can drive your user growth.
Thank you very much, Adam, and good evening, good morning, good time of day for everyone who's joining us today. So I work at Global App Testing, and we test a lot of apps globally. And the benefit of this is that we're exposed to different kinds of testing and different creative ways how our customers find to use the global crowd to drive their product growth. And I want to talk to you about a particular kind of testing today, which is testing for discovery. So as opposed to testing for quality, which is the normal kind of well understood type of testing, where you are trying to verify that the functionality is working correctly and find bugs and problems that you can fix, testing for discovery has a different goal. You're trying to find insights that will help you gain additional understanding of your users, your competition, your market, and your own product. So let me give you an example. So last year, we were working with a company. It's a B2C company, and they were looking to improve their conversion rate of the sign-up flow. So from discovering the product all the way to finalizing the sign-up and adding a payment method. So they wanted to improve the amount of conversions through that funnel. So what we did, the testing that we helped them design, is gathered a group of testers and we gave them a task. Sign up for this product all the way through to the end with no guidance on how to exactly to do it. They needed to record the entire process. Throughout the process, they needed to report any issues that they come across, not just functional issues where something's not working, but things like, oh, it's not very clear, the messaging is not very clear, or the functionality is not very usable, or it could be improved in terms of accessibility, things like that. And finally, share their some ideas on how to improve the flow. As a result of that testing, we've been able to find usability issues to improve the easiness of the setup. We found some messaging that was not entirely clear throughout the process, and there were even some functional problems particularly with one of the payment methods that was also reported to the client. So the client was able to fix those problems, and since the test was already set up, they're able to rerun the test again after those problems are fixed to gain evidence that the problems are indeed not affecting the sign-up flow anymore. So through this, they also saw an improvement in the conversion rates like they expected. So this example is more simple and straightforward. Let me give you a slightly more complex example. So this time it's a different company, a well-known brand. Let's say it's a design tool that in this particular instance was focusing on how to be the easiest to use on the market. So in order to drive testing for this, we collected a group of testers and we gave them 3 products to test with, which was the customer's product and 2 competitors, and the testers had no knowledge which one is which. And they needed to complete a task, the same task in all 3 tools, which is design a simple postcard. And after that, they needed to complete a questionnaire to answer specific questions about their experience. So things like, which tool was the easiest to use? Which tool did you enjoy the most? Which tool resulted in the best result? Which tool would you recommend to a friend who is not very tech savvy? Things like that. And we designed the questionnaire in such a way that it was collecting not just qualitative data, like, text fields essentially, but also quantitative information, so numeric data, so scores and percentages, things like that. So through this, we were able to provide a visibility of both what the current performance of this product against competition in the area of focus, which is easiness to use, is, and also lots of ideas and insight on how to improve it. So after the customer works on improving the easiness using the insight generated, they're able to repeat the test again. So the repeat tests provide the measurement of the change of the performance and evidence of the impact on solving the problems that were highlighted. And the customer was able to continue to iterate on this until they achieved desired result, and it was clear from the evidence and from the measurements that that was successful. So hopefully through these couple of examples, I've given you some ideas of how you can use testing to improve your understanding of your users and drive your product growth. Setting up such tests can be challenging. There's a lot of things to do, and in terms of logistics, recruiting participants, paying them, designing tests, aggregating the results, working with a provider like ourselves can make it much easier. However, even if you do it yourself, the value from the discovery that you can get from this can significantly outweigh the efforts that you put in.
Thank you so much. Awesome. Yeah, that was super interesting. I know that I've been asking everybody in the audience to pile into the Q&A. We're yet to have our first question, but it is open. So do ask a question whenever. We'll come to it at the end. I'm going to turn the tables on you now, which is that we are going to launch a poll. So this is something I'll hold it open for a few minutes and then I'll close it and we'll share the answer with you at the end. But it's just a straightforward question about how competent you think your organization is at research. So I know that people watching back can't see it, so I'll quickly read it out. The question is, how well do you feel that your organization does research and or testing with its international users? And we've got extremely well, quite well, my organization attempts it, but does it poorly, or we do no testing. And then finally, we've only got domestic users category. So we'll do that at the end. But for now, let's plow on with our speeches. I've introduced Sabrina. We're going to be talking about jobs to be done. I'm so interested to hear what you have to say. Welcome, Sabrina.
Thanks, Adam. That was a great introduction. And I really liked Artem's case studies showing the value that user research brings. That's amazing. Yeah, I have a very special topics, using jobs to be done to focus on the user. And if you go to the next slide, I'm a principal researcher at the StepStone Group, and we are one of the world's leading job platforms. We have over 20 brands across more than 30 countries around the globe. And our mission is the right job for everyone. And I focus mostly on Germany and UK. So I have to admit, we are not researching all of our brands in all of our markets. Yeah, probably would benefit from global app testing. Yeah, jobs to be done. What is it? It is just a new lens to look at products, a new way of thinking. We shift from products to jobs, to the jobs users have. So instead of a drill, it's about having a nice home, because this is the real job a user has to do. Instead of Netflix, it's just a way of relaxing. Instead of Lego bricks, it's a way to bond with your child. So the focus shifts from products to jobs. Next slide. The origins are in this book from Theodore Levitt, and this is a very famous quote. They don't want quarter-inch drill bits, they want quarter-inch balls, because people don't buy products, they hire products to do jobs. And a job, it's not a job in the sense, in a very narrow sense, like the jobs we offer at StepStone. It's more like solving a problem or fulfilling a desire. So it's jobs in a very broad sense. Next slide. Yeah, how we use jobs to be done at StepStone. Next slide. The most important thing, the first step, is a solid databases. So we did a lot of jobs to be done research with our agency, with Jan from Venwich. And we did over 50 in-depth interviews, over 9,000 people surveyed to find out the jobs our job seekers have, and also the pain points and emotions for our two main targets groups, the browsers and the active job seekers. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is a job hierarchy at StepStone, and you see the higher level jobs to lead a purposeful life. And then you have to be valued, to finance a lifestyle, to progress in your career, to improve work-life balance. And you see, these are really visions in life, also emotional goals. And the core job for users is, of course, to find a new job or find a better job or to improve the work situation. And then when you look at the two different target groups, the job browsers, active job seekers, their lower level jobs differ a little bit. So the job browsers, their job is to reflect on current occupation, to assess their market value. And for the active job seekers, research a company, conduct an interview process. So these are all jobs for our users. Next slide, please. So the first step was we had this knowledge. And the second step is you have to activate this knowledge, because the goal is to develop better user-focused products. And so it's not enough just to do research, you have to activate it. And what we did, we trained 120 people in product cross-functional. That's super important. Not only researchers should know about this. So we had product managers, UX, analytics, engineering, and we had the trainings and workshops also per portfolio, per product area. And we had internal trainers and champions to really ingrain the jobs to be done thinking into our company. And Vanbridge, our agency, they gave us advice, guidance, and they also did the initial research. Research is quite time consuming, so sometimes it makes sense to get external support. Next slide, please. Yeah, and this is the outcome. One of our products based on jobs to be done. And this is Lawrence, our product portfolio director at StepStone. And this is his product. Yeah, so we did the full circle. We started with the knowledge, the activation, and then we used it for developing user-focused products that really solve the jobs users have, their problems. Next slide, please. Yeah, to sum it up, the big advantages, jobs to be done removes the guesswork about the user by focusing on what users really want and need on their jobs. And jobs to be done is also solution agnostic because it describes just the problem space without already thinking about solutions. And it has long-term validity because when you did the research once and found out about the different jobs of the users, then it will not change that fast. And what I personally find very attractive, it's not just functional jobs, but also so-called emotional jobs. So you've seen the job hierarchy, and it uses jobs on all levels, basically. So high level life goals, be happy in life, and then very detailed micro jobs. Yeah, preparing for a job interview would be more a micro job. Yeah, this was very short. I hope you got an impression how we use jobs to be done for more user focus and developing user focused products at StepStone. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was so interesting to hear the jobs to be done framework applied to something as complex and emotionally challenging as applying for jobs, if that makes sense. I know it's something that obviously matters very much to people. So yeah, really, really interesting to hear that. If you do have questions, please do ask. I know we're yet to get our first question. In my experience, the first one comes and then a number of others do afterwards. So please do ask that first question if you have one. But yes, thank you very much, Sabrina. I'm going to hand over to Carolina now. Carolina is going to be telling us all about cultural sensitivity as a driver for global expansion. Over to you, Carolina.
Thank you, Adam. I'm Carolina Freire, and today I'm going to talk about cultural sensitivity as a driver for global expansion. So when a company first decides to expand globally, there are basically two approaches it can go. The first approach is geographic expansion. So let's say a company decides to expand first to EMEA and then APAC. And after it has solidified its position on those markets, it expands to Latin America later on. Or the language expansion approach, where let's say a US-based company first goes to UK and Canada, English-speaking markets, and later on to Spanish-speaking markets on a second phase. And although those two approaches work really well for the initial expansion, they tend to fall short in the long run. And the reason for that is that neither approach accounts for culture. So take Europe, for example, so many different countries with different, if you can go back, with different languages and cultures. And also, even if you take two countries that share the same language, like Portugal and Brazil, they have very different cultures. So how do we throw culture into the mix? Now let's go to the next slide. And I really like the context, the framework of low context and high context cultures that was developed by an anthropologist back in the 70s. And he basically divided cultures into two groups based on how important the context is for the message and the communications. So on one side of the spectrum, you have cultures like German, American, and British, where the context doesn't really matter. You take the words for what they are. So the communication is very explicit, very simple, and very clear. On the other side of the spectrum, you have cultures like Italian, Latin American, Chinese, where the context really matters. Who you are talking to, your relation to that person, where the communication is taking place. So communications are very implicit, very nuanced. To help you better visualize the difference between those two cultural groups, let's take a look at the McDonald's website. And here we have screenshots for the McDonald's website in the US and Germany. And although you do have some pictures, it's quite text heavy. And there are a lot of information about the products being communicated on those texts. Now contrast that with the exactly same website for Brazil and Mexico. If we can go to the next slide, yes. So here, lots of colors, lots of pictures, not so much text, but very, very appropriate for high context culture. So now that you have learned about this framework, how do you take this concept of high-low context culture into more practical ways to help you better understand your users, your customers? So I would like to share 4 tips for things we do here at Uber with very positive results. The first thing is test. Test, test, test. Test your product, your website, your campaign, not only for language quality and functionality, but also for cultural relevance. So do UX research, LQA testing, and ask your user, do the icons, photos, and colors resonate to you, speak to your culture? The second thing also, have your localization program managers focus on markets rather than language, or on top of language, to bring the element of culture into the mix. Also, get inputs and insights from your regional teams whenever developing or naming new features and products. And lastly, but not least, have your localization team evangelizing product managers and global stakeholders on the cultural difference of international users. So be very proactive in getting to know your users and building products and creating communications that not only speak to their language, but also relate to their culture. So that's all from me. Thank you so much. Back to you, Adam.
Thank you so much. That was so interesting. And yeah, great to see those different visual examples. I'm going to hand over to Olga now. If you do UX research in the room, I think we're going to hear 3 mistakes that you might be making. Over to you, Olga.
Thanks very much, Adam. Hello, everyone. I'm Olga, and today I'm going to speak about typical mistakes that organizations make in the user research. Again, there might be plenty of those mistakes, but we will be focusing on 3 today. So the first one is a lack of unified and transparent definition of who the user is across the organization. The second one is actually working in isolation or working in silos. And the third one is thinking of your research as a purely academic endeavor. In many organizations, there is a disconnect in understanding who the user is. So, for example, marketing might work on customer segments, sales think in accounts, product might focus on user types or cohorts, and UX develops personas. A unified and open definition of the user is crucial. When different departments align on this definition and this understanding, or at least can point a single source of truth, that's actually a good sign of efficient communication in the organization. Also, specificity is key when talking about the user. It's not a generic term. It's never just a user. It always refers to a group with specific needs. Like, for example, a dermatologist that requires a patients to be compliant with their treatments, or digital marketing managers who aim to have their websites optimized, or HR business partners in global corporations who want to grow and develop and maximize their employee potential. So understanding and aligning on who the user is actually helps in connecting those actions in product to the specific needs of the user and to the specific success metrics of that user. With that said, especially in complex B2B products, you might have quite large sets of different types of users, like we do in Workday, yet still it is important to have a line definition for each of those. Also, as Artem mentioned, for example, when you run a product discovery and test your solutions or early prototypes, it will help you to see your solutions through the eyes of the users. And then when you have the shared perception across organization, you actually make everyone to understand what a user is doing in our product, why they have a specific needs, and also how they measure their own success. Now, another kind of typical mistake is working in silos, and often departments like product, design, UX, research, engineering, marketing, sales, customer success, they just kind of live in their own worlds. But cross-functional collaboration is essential for holistic understanding of the user and henceforth efficient product development. And why is that? Because it fosters those diverse perspectives from different people and different roles. It also aligns team, and actually it accelerates your learning as organizations. And as you do this, as you learn more, as you learn better who your users are, you define and develop more refined product solutions. At Workday, for example, we also use jobs to be done framework to achieve the shared understanding across various teams. And this approach is beneficial because, yes, it is backed by research, it is scalable, it is goal-oriented, it is solution agnostic. Yes, Sabrina, it is inclusive, and also it provides a very concrete user definition. So through jobs to be done, we simplify the view of Workday users based on how and why they engage with Workday products. And lastly, some thoughts on being intentional with user research even before you start talking to any user or customers. So often what happens, companies might think of a research as a purely academic endeavor. And while it is great if you apply the same scientific rigor and depth of understanding to your UX research, the desired outcome of UX research is actually not to provide a dissertation of a sort or a very, very lengthy publications. It's actually to enable business and understand the context in which they have to develop a product. Pretty much, I would say, the deliverable of any UX research is an actionable insight and learnings, which are supported by data and which can be pragmatically applied. Also, I think Sabrina mentioned as well, once you have the data, it's actually not enough just to have the data. You really have to activate it. You really have to use it proactively. It resonates very well with my experience and my view. Now, speaking of rigor and being intentional with UX research is also what I believe we should do. Instead of kind of trying to just like, oh, well, let's collect all this data, let's try to figure out what it means. And maybe all we figure out is just that we need to make more research. It might be the case, that's right. However, I think intentionality means before you do any type of user research, before you define the methodology, you should kind of map the specific goals ahead of the research itself. So what do we want to learn? What hypotheses we would like to test, validate or invalidate? What assumptions do we have? How can we verify them again? And then when you speak to the users, I think it's also very important to kind of apply the cultural sensitivity that Carolina spoke of, because even though you have this big bucket of someone with the same jobs to be done, just them being located in different communities or sub-communities might have some implications on how they would perceive your product and also how they would understand your research questions potentially. And however, I think what's the most important also, just having those specific insights in UX research also not enough. You have to regularly share this across the team. You have to pretty much keep creating this shared understanding so that your organization can learn together. So I think the main takeaways that I want to highlight are first, establish a shared specific understanding of your users, their needs, and how your products contributes to their success. Engage with your users frequently, but also make sure to involve different teams in those conversations. And finally, approach UX research strategically and diligently, consistently share the insights, and focus on optimizing team-wide learning. That's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I've personally got loads of questions about that. If you do have questions, do pile them in. Oh, I can see that we've still got none. We do have a few questions written in our entry form, so I know that a few of you have answered questions. I can just see it's just lit up with our first question. Thank you very much, Damien. And we will get to that in the Q&A in a couple of minutes. But before that, we've got Simon Hodgkins. Simon is the Chief Marketing Officer at Vistatech. Vistatech help global brands shape their global content strategy in ways that boost user engagement in all kinds of ways. So great to meet you, Simon, first of all. And my first question is, obviously this webinar is called Help, I'm Nothing Like My Users, right? And that implies that if you don't do the research or if you don't understand your users, then it's going to have negative consequences in terms of the way that you do content and the way that you build your product. I wonder if you could spell out for us what that might mean and give us a little bit of a picture of what's the difference between an organization that really understands their users and one that doesn't, in terms of the kind of content that you guys deliver.
Yeah, thank you, Adam. And look, it's been a fascinating conversation. We've discussed testing assumptions. We've talked about focusing on users, cultural sensitivities come up, and our last speaker there about, avoiding these costly UX research mistakes. So to build on that and to answer your question, maybe I can just touch on a few sort of areas that can help people build maybe a better case scenario. And the first thing, we've kind of touched on it a little bit, but I just want to dive into knowing your audience a little bit better and understanding the target market. And people, that comes a lot in conversations, and it sounds really simple, but each audience really has lots of segments. Really need to get down into the segmentation of understanding your audience, understanding your user. And if you just take geographies like Europe, the US, the UK, and start to consider how many languages, how many cultures, how many different communities just exist within those areas. And then you start to think about that in an international, global context. Getting the communications right is important, because misaligned communications, misaligned UX, and maybe a lack of strategy around that alignment, it can lead to really costly errors. And, it's a huge area for mistakes, but it can also really lead to reputational damage, which is something that brands need to avoid at all costs. And they need to engage their audience and make sure that their content and their product and services actually resonate and reach the right audience for them. The last thing I would say on that particular area is that you must have initiatives to help you drive localization and your international or cross-border, cross-cultural initiatives. And you need to really view them as something that isn't a cost of doing business or something you need to invest in, but maybe try and shift the scale, shift the balance from being a cost center into something that can help drive profits, can help drive customer retention, can help drive new revenues and new customer reach. And, I've packed a lot into that answer, Adam, but I hope that maybe kicks off this part of the session a little bit.
Absolutely. I've got one more question for you, and then I want to ask questions that I'll open up to the panel. The second question is, so obviously you are a supplier. Most of the people on this webinar, or most of the audience, are what we'd think of as kind of client side, and would work with suppliers like yourself for their global content and their localization or whatever it is. How can they make sure they get the best out of their suppliers in this area to ensure that the content or whatever it is they're working towards is as well aligned to local users as it possibly can be?
Yeah, and look, it's not an advert, but Vistatech's been around a long time, since '97, working with, as you said at the top, some of the world's biggest brands, and particularly in the translation, localization, transcreation space. But to answer your question, you've got to really get down to the different content types. So whether it's written word, whether it's audio or video, and we all know video is huge now, but content exploding, it continues to grow, whether it's YouTube Short, whether it's Instagram Reels, whether it's the latest AI generated content, user generated content, repurposed content. You've got new creative coming out all the time from different brands. But what's important is how you build the trust, the clarity, and the ease of use and the interaction, whether that's an app or whether that's an article or whether that's video. It has to build trust. It has to be clear, because if people don't understand it, they don't use it. And if they won't use it, they're probably not going to bait or recommend it. So that's the first thing I'd say. The second thing is you need to consider how mature you are as an organization when it comes to localization and internationalization. There's something called the Localization Maturity Index, which some people may be familiar with. And obviously we work with experts all around the world, and we particularly with brands, we make sure that people are located in the target community, living locally, they're, natural language speakers, and they're immersed in the culture to help with that local linguistic skill, which is often essential for brands to make sure they get that alignment right. And finally, don't try to do it all yourself. And that might seem like a really easy thing to say, but you must focus on your business, and you must work with partners, whether that's in global app testing, whether it's in the world of UX and graphic design, whether it's in producing videos, or whether it's working with somebody like Vistatech who can help you with, your localization, global content. If you can focus on your business and then pull in expertise, we find that's a really winning combination for most of the brands that we work with. Hope that helps, Adam.
Thank you very much. Yes, it does. So I've got a couple of really quick notices now, and then we can dive straight into the questions for everybody. The first is that, as I said at the start, the next episode of The Alignment is open. It is on, I believe, the 21st of February. It'll be at the same time of day as this one, wherever you are, and you can register now. It is called "Why is Nobody Talking About My Product?" It is a question we've all asked, or certainly our managers have, and here we will attempt to answer it. So do sign up, and we'll hope to see you all in a month's time. The other one, as I said at the start, we have launched this huge guide that has 44 different global product leader voices in it, all about how to launch your product abroad, all the tips we collected over 2023. It's a fantastic read. Do just scan the QR code and then save it for later. It will be worth your time, I promise. And then the final thing is that we are able to make an exclusive offer to people of The Alignment. If you are interested in global app testing and some of what Artem described, you can scan this QR code and you can launch a free localization test. This is a really exciting offer because we're not able to offer it to just anybody. So do fill it in, and you'll get some issues or bugs back on 3 live products of your choice. That is all of the notices. If you missed a QR code, don't worry, my colleague is posting links in the chat just now as we speak. But for now, I'm going to exit the presentation style document. We've got this Let's Align warp to light speed graphic, which always amuses me. And we can get to the questions. So I can see that Tatiana has asked in the chat. She's targeted Sabrina, but I want to give everybody an opportunity to answer. What major differences in jobs to be done have you noticed across the different countries and cultures? Interested in job search and interviews. Obviously, we've got 2 job search software on the call today, so this is great. Do any of you want to jump in and answer that one?
Yes. In almost all research we do, we look for differences between Germany and UK. But with the jobs to be done, they are on a more, how to say, on a more higher level. So there are not really differences between Germany and the UK. So also in other studies, so barriers, for example, to apply for a new job, there was just one thing different between Germany and the UK. So we keep an eye on that, but so far with the jobs to be done, not so much. I think what we've heard with cultural differences, images, and yeah, all these things, this is more design related. I would assume there are more design related differences than actual differences in goals and motivations and emotions. Yeah, this is just my personal impression from the research we do.
Olga, do you want to add
Anyone
anything to
else?
that?
Yeah, I think I also have a couple of things to it. I would agree with Sabrina. It's not necessarily kind of on the level of jobs to be done per se, but more on the ways of how you are actually able to fulfill those jobs to be done, right? And like differences, for example, also on what people would value more cross-culture when it comes to, for example, not necessarily compensation package, but culture and workplace. So I know, for example, in Denmark specifically, we very, very love our work-life balance, and for no like extra money, we will be happy to just, you know, like knock out 24/7. So that is very important to know if you want to kind of attract a talent from the specific location or specific culture. And the same, I think, probably even within like small Denmark, there are still differences between Sjælland and Jylland or Jutland, or kind of in terms of how open people are when it comes to flexibility or work-life balance, but also maybe preferences of how you communicate with your upcoming boss.
I think this is a brilliant example. We actually do quite a lot of research about work-life balance and also try to meet the needs of users in that area. And I would say we look more into different needs, but not necessarily different nationalities. So Olga, like you said, in Denmark, work-life balance might be more important than in the UK or Germany. But as we anyway address these needs, it doesn't matter. So the differences between user groups might be higher than differences between countries. Yeah, and I think it makes more sense to look at the different segments and not necessarily at the different nationalities. So also, like we heard before, not looking at focusing on languages, but more on cultural things, differences. Yeah.
I've got a fantastic question here from the entry form, actually. So presumably the person is in the room with us. Obviously, there's a few different kind of categories of user difference, but this person asks, how do I research customers who are very affluent? And I know that a lot of us are asked to understand either people who command high business budgets or people who are high net worth individuals. And I wonder if there's any specific tips that you have on user research around those people who I know can be sort of difficult to find and get to answer surveys and things. Olga, you've got up your hand.
Yeah, I think it's just like one approach that you could use. You could actually utilize or piggyback on a second-hand research, so to speak. So not necessarily lifting this in your organization if you don't necessarily know how to get started or where to approach. You could look at analysts' reports, for example, or you could team up with organizations who actually specialize in like finding the specific user groups, such as Global App Testing or someone else. Right. So I think that's very important to kind of not to get stuck, but try to understand like what are the possibilities rather what are the limitations.
Does anybody else want to come in on that one?
I just want to add one thing. I think regardless if the user is affluent or not, if you don't know the user, you have to start from somewhere. And what Olga said about, hiring research companies and things can help, but also putting yourself on the user's shoes and even going to places where they go, if it's possible, and trying to understand where they are coming from, getting out of your chair, your office, and meeting the user, I find very helpful.
Fantastic. Sabrina, you've got up your hand.
Yes, so like Olga said, then I would always recommend working with recruitment agencies so they can get you almost everyone, anyone. But of course, specific target groups then might be very expensive. And of course, there are other ways. You could also try to go to events where these people go to. Yes, I did it sometimes in B2B research. So I was actually I was hunting data scientists, so I went to events and talks because I needed data scientists for my research. Yeah, you have to get a bit creative, go where the user is and try to mingle and convince them. And I think getting specific niche target groups for user research, you have to be very flexible. It's not like, okay, I schedule you for a 1-hour interview. It can also be a chat at an event or telephone call whenever they have time. For example, I recruited GPs and nurses without a budget for recruiting, without a budget for incentive, but I managed to get them. But I was really, when they were in the train or whatever, they did the phone call with me. So yeah, it can be quite challenging as a user researcher to get to your target group, but there are ways. Yeah. I also
Fantastic.
interviewed traders, for example. This was very exciting. Traders really think differently than normal people. I discovered. Yeah.
Yes, there are. Yeah, I mean, I was about to launch into an unflattering stereotype about traders there, but I won't. Simon, you had up your hand there. Was that deliberate or was that an accident?
I just wanted to add one more thing just to this conversation and to the question, really, because I think one of the dangers that we all face is that you can try to get a niche group together and ask questions, the same questions to the same group, in inverted commas. But within that group, there's huge differences in their emotional requirements, in the social components. There's huge variance within the outcomes people within that group are looking for. And that can be everything from age to culture to, religion to where they live in the world. And I think sometimes we can all fall into the trap of thinking we've got a niche, but actually what we need to do is get extremely granular and ask better questions and ask the right questions to ensure that we are truly connecting and getting the answers that we want. So I just wanted to add that to what's been said.
Fantastic. So I have another question. And I know that this is related to something that that Olga said in her speech, but I'd like to invite anybody on the panel to answer it, which is what to do about how to A, evangelize your user research, and B, what to do if you've not got a very well aligned definition of the user across the organization. Because it's very easy to sort of say, well, organizations should align, but how do you as an individual try and ensure that alignment happens? Can I tempt anyone to come out on that one?
I can start with that. So I think, from my example at Uber, I think this can be very challenging for global companies because there are so many different stakeholders, different offices. So that alignment can be quite challenging. So for Uber, we have the localization team responsible for getting that alignment and visualization. And to me, what really helps is trying to show to product manager, like even taking a screenshot and back translating things to English or showing, let's say, for Arabic language, sometimes we have issues with bidirectional. So, some languages are from right to left. So even creating a screenshot, like a fake screenshot in English, showing them the user experience, the actual user experience. So I find that this helps because sometimes it's hard for people in the US or the headquarters to really see the problem, see the user experience, the international user experience. So finding a way to help them visualize, hey, this is the user experience they are having. Look at this screenshot. So to me, that helps to get that alignment you mentioned. Really spending the time to educate and show them, here, look, this is the problem. Most of the time we find out that it's not that people don't want to help, it's just they really don't see the problem as we see. So helping them take that step is helpful.
Artem, you've got up your hand.
Yes, thank you. So there are two questions that you asked. The second one on the alignment around who the users are. I want to take a page from the Jobs to be Done book actually on this, because I think that not the book, but the theory rather, there is a very helpful definition of what a target market is for a product. It's a combination of the target user and a job. So I think if you recognize that you have multiple kinds of target users, and each target user can have multiple different jobs that they may hire your product for. Each combination is a separate user or is a separate customer segment. And sometimes they're very different. And it's important to recognize not just demographic characteristics of the users, but the job that they have when they pursue your product or they hire your product. So, and the other question, which was how do you evangelize the results of research? I want to share how like one of our designers in our organization does that, which I think is brilliant. She makes a like one-page image that has a interview snapshot, has the interview when she conducts an interview with a person, she puts together their face, like some brief description of their background and some key highlights from that interview. Since it's a graphic, it's on one page, just post on a Slack channel that's been very shown to have very high engagement and helps evangelize the results of the research.
Olga, you've got up your hand.
Yeah, I think I can only like sing in the choir to what been said previously, because I absolutely agree. Show, don't tell. It's very impactful. If you can demonstrate like a layout differences or kind of challenges with non-Latin language, non-left to right language, that's one thing. You also sometimes think of like, are there any technical limitation in a specific market? Maybe the average internet connection speed is quite low in the specific market, and that's pretty much makes something load forever, which is not a good user experience. And if you can emulate it and showcase this is actually happening, that's super powerful. Another one also, I think, again, as for instance, as kind of like Artem illustrated, if you put a real person behind and you have a quote, this also could be super powerful, because you basically just increase this empathy like 20-fold for that specific user and the issue.
That's an amazing point, and I will pass it over to you, Sabrina. But I just wanted to add the speed of internet in different countries things is a fantastic one. We work with the BBC World Service, and in a previous event with us, they talked about how they use the price of data in different countries as a key kind of heuristic that informs what kind of product they go to those environments with. Because actually in countries where data is very, very expensive, they are really kind of looking at even things like custom fonts and stuff, trying to get down the data that their product uses, because it is absolutely the thing that makes the difference. Sabrina, over to you.
That's a brilliant example, yeah. I think similar with the mobile phone models. They offer completely different models in countries with different context or with less affluent people or different needs, or in countries where people don't have any other internet connection or telephone except the mobile phone. So it completely different needs then. Yeah, I wanted to add, I also love pictures of users and quotes. And as a psychologist, this all comes down to the fact that humans think in stories. Person does something with this outcome, and then you can remember, and then it also grabs you on an emotional level. That's why summarizing data or only quantitative data, you don't get your stakeholders emotionally. But when you have a story, this user cannot use your app because the internet connection is too bad, then or the user cannot do his job and doesn't have an income because of you, because your application doesn't work with slow internet. For example, this is something this sticks in people's mind, then they will remember this and they will improve their product. Yeah.
Fantastic. I'm going to share the poll results. I haven't done it so far only because I think that it is a sort of perfect U-curve sat over the kind of the middle answer. So maybe slightly less to comment on there than we could expect. But we've only got 4 minutes left. So I want to invite the panel just, I guess, to react to the poll, and then maybe also to reflect on how do you know when it's time to invest more in UX research or testing? At what point should you go, you know what, we're not doing this well enough, it's time to put on the gas? Or when are you doing excessively and you know, investing too much maybe? Is there anybody who could sort of come in on that, on research and testing as a business function, when it's prudent to invest more in it?
Can I jump in there, Adam?
Absolutely.
I think one of the stats that it's extremely low, if you look at the last one, where we do no testing, 8%. And I think that the challenge is as well, it's an educational piece. It's not just about conducting the research and conducting the testing. It's an internal educational piece that helps people understand the benefits of the research, the benefits of the test, the benefits of reaching new international markets, the benefits of taking your product or service into new markets, whether that's within your home geography, or whether that's into other areas and other parts of the world. And it is, in a lot of cases we see firsthand, there's an internal educational piece that's required as well. So just wanted to add that in, but I don't want to take up too much time because I know we're up against it here.
Of course. Olga, over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think another signal, like in addition to like if you really want to kind of grow your markets and explore, as Simon says, that's very important. Another signal, if you kind of start noticing the productivity drops, or you have this general feeling that you're not running as fast as you want to, because people spend time kind of discussing the nitty-gritty, trying to align and disagree, and don't understand who are we building for and why we're doing it in this specific way. It's a clear sign for you to kind of like, okay, maybe let's slow down a little bit. Let's actually focus and do our diligent research before we start building with confidence.
And Carolina, you had up your hand, or
yeah, we are almost at time, but I want to say one thing. I'm a big proponent of testing, but I think Simon said something about that I think super important. Are we asking the right questions? Are we testing the right things? So I think before starting testing, you need to have clarity on that. And also after you test and you get the insights, can you act on those insights? So there is a goal of testing that is improving the product. So you need to make sure that you can act on those insights to improve the product.
Thank you so much. Okay, I have to, I'm afraid, call time on the alignment. We do need to respect everybody's time. Thank you so much to everybody who has joined us here today. And if you liked it, please do sign up to the next episode, which is coming very, very shortly on the 21st of February. And then also we will send you an email. We'll try and include all of those resources that I can see people have included in the chat. So hopefully we'll get all of the links to you, if presumably we have your email if you've signed up. So thank you so much for coming, and we're going to call it a day there, and we'll see you all next month. Goodbye, everybody, and thanks for joining.